to change your name. Well, welcome. We were just all talking about how much we loved this book.
Well, thank you. Thank you guys so much for having me. I am thrilled because this is like the first time that I get to talk about it with readers ever. So I'm so excited to be here.
Well, it's funny that you say that because that's what every author says, because we're doing these early. And so it's really fun. I think it's a neat benefit to get to read it early, talk early, and kind of be the guinea pigs for you.
Awesome.
Well, I'll get us started, but anybody who has questions, it's the same as always. If you haven't participated before, either just raise your hand or just hop right in, send it in the chat, however you want to do it. But if you have questions, definitely make sure that you get to ask them. I don't want to be hogging Colleen the whole time. So feel free to jut in whenever you want. But Colleen, we'll get started with how you came up with the idea, which I know I was telling them you and I had already spoken.
Yeah, we got to chat a few weeks ago. But so this book, I really like to call it a love letter to my grandmother, who was my very favorite person on earth. She sadly passed a few years ago at the age of 92. But a few years before she died, she was diagnosed with late onset Parkinson's disease, which I don't know if any of you have ever had to deal with anybody that has Parkinson's, but it's a really, really tough illness. And you know, among many other symptoms, one of the major things that happens is, along with the cocktail of drugs and Parkinson's disease, my grandmother was suffering from a lot of hallucinations. She would have very vivid dreams that she felt was real. And on our weekly phone call, she started to say some kind of alarming things. She would say things like, she asked me one time if I had written the $10,000 check for her gambling debts in New Jersey. She told me one time that I asked her what she did that week, and she said, "Oh, I was on a submarine tour. It was lovely." One time when my Aunt Wendy went to visit her in her nursing home, she said, "Wendy, I can't believe you're here." And Wendy said, "Well, you know, Mom, I come every day." And she goes, "Well, you were in jail for killing that man." So it was just like these very interesting things that she started to think were real. And my grandmother had the greatest sense of humor. So all of these things, like, she would have thought they were hilarious had she, you know, been with it enough to know what was going on. And so we started kind of sharing them as a family, kind of to help us with our grief for the whole situation. And my novelist brain just started turning, and I just started thinking, you know, what if any one of these things that she was saying was actually true? You know, what if she did have gambling debts? What if she and my grandfather traveled all over the world because she was actually, you know, an international jewelry thief? And what if she had kept all of these things secret from us, from our family, and it was just starting to come out toward the end of her life? And that is when my character of Louise was born. And I kind of decided to give Louise, you know, she was really heavily inspired by my grandmother. And I think for me, it was very cathartic because as I was writing the book, I was really freshly dealing with the death of my grandmother. And so writing it every day was such a joy because it felt like I got to spend time with her.
I love that. And I think that is why Louise is one of those characters that so resonated with everybody, because I think, you know, you brought your grandmother to the page, or at least portions of your grandmother to the page.
Yep. That's awesome. And I love, you know, I've heard from a few other early readers that they see their great aunt, or they see, you know, somebody that was very close to them also in Louise. And that makes me so happy that they end up feeling, you know, close to Louise as well.
Yes, Louise was great. I mean, one of those characters you will not soon forget.
Thank you.
Does anybody have a question they want to ask?
I just had a quick one. Colleen, loved the book, loved the friendship between Tanner and Louise, and I'm also was really close with my grandmother as well, so I could feel that in the story. Just a question for you about the end. I was just wondering if you knew how you were going to end the book all along, or did it kind of play out as you were writing? Because I feel like as I was reading, I was like, I want to see how I don't know how she's going to end this.
Yeah,
so I was just curious.
I did know how it was going to end. I mean, I knew that she was, you know, that she had actually committed the robbery from the 70s. A lot of the other twists and turns in the book, though, I did not know. I'm more of a write as I go. I don't outline things. And so a lot of the things that may have surprised you guys surprised me as well when I was writing.
Even the part like the George and the daughter and all of that. I mean, that wasn't something you knew from the beginning.
Not from the very beginning. I mean, it just kind of came to me as I went, you know, the Jules thing, when that came to me, I was like, oh my gosh, I love this. I hope I can pull it off, because I thought that was so funny.
That was awesome.
Definitely was awesome. Yes. And George being a woman, we were kind of talking
Yes,
about that
I
earlier.
did. That was pretty early on. I really liked kind of hiding that. And I loved, you know, I played with a lot of feminist themes and a lot of, you know, gender themes in this book. And so that was a big part of that, when you just kind of, you know, assume that George, of course, is a man, and I turned that on its head.
And Tanner and Marty.
Tanner was a man. Yeah.
Yeah.
Sorry, Cindy.
No, go right ahead, Megan.
I was just gonna say, I thought before I heard you talk about before I read the premise of the book, I just assumed that Tanner was a man as well.
Yeah.
So,
And you know what's actually really funny about that, and I haven't thought of this because I've started writing this book years ago. When I very first came up with the concept and wrote this concept down, Tanner was a boy. And when I started getting into it, I was like, no, like this is so much more about like female friendships. And so she very quickly changed into a girl, but it is funny that my very first inception of the book, Tanner was a boy.
funny.
Yeah, I like that. Well, and Tanner and Marty, and then she's like, well, is your brother named Jessica? Like, I just
Right.
love that. There were so many great one-liners.
That was the question I want to ask. Hi, Colleen. How are you?
Hi, good. How are you doing?
Good. Hopefully I'll see you soon.
I know. I hope so.
I have a question, and I had some other quotes written down, but I just left Kristen's event, which actually is still going on. But I wrote down, a fox may grow gray, but never good.
Yeah.
And I had a lot more written down, and I was curious, are a lot of those things maybe like your parents and or grandparents have said, and things you just have put away, and then you intertwine them into the book, because they seem like they're real personal to me.
Yes, absolutely. There are so many personal family, you know, witticisms, things that my family has said, things that my family has done. You know, just a lot of Easter eggs. As my family members have read the book, they just keep texting me, and they're dying. I can't believe you put that in there, you know. And then the fox, a fox will go gray but never good. That's actually a very famous Chinese proverb, and one of my very best friends is Chinese, and her grandmother used to say that.
Yeah, cool. Well, that's interesting. You mentioned your family too. If I may just real quick tell, Colleen's actually from Greenville, which is where I live, and Colleen and I have met. But I met Colleen's mother at an event, and she was walking around telling everyone thank you for coming, and then I ran into her in Tybee Island at an event for Kristen Hermel and Patty and Mary Kay, and she had a pin on it and had Colleen's face on it. And I turned around and ran right out, was kind of into her, and she's like, hey, I know you. And I was like, yeah, I know you. And then as soon as I saw it, I remembered exactly that it was Colleen's mother. But I've never seen a mother, and your dad was there that night too in Greenville. He was not there in Tybee, but there was another mother there too, and I can't remember whose mother it was, but it was just so interesting to see how the love and the encouragement and everything from your mother that day. I just thought it was something that was really, really special.
Thank you. Yes, my mom is the greatest. She goes with me on every tour. We're actually about to embark on the tour for this, and she's been booking all her flights and everything, and we just have the greatest time on the road together. And not only her, but like my entire family is just so ridiculously supportive, and I'm so lucky to have them all.
I love that she wears a pin with your photo on it.
Yes,
And that's great. Like
become
Anissa
quite
said.
quite famous with some of my Instagram friends and followers. They're like, if they see a picture of my mom and she doesn't have her pin on, I always get a few like, where's your mom's pin?
I love that. And that's a great way, like Anissa said, to connect it up. Oh, I know this woman. It's Colleen's mom.
Yes.
Well, one of the things I loved about the book was all of the things interspersed in there, like the text string with Louise's kids, the FBI agents. I mean, I love the FBI agents themselves, but also the transcripts. Was that something you had done from the beginning, or was that something that developed as the story developed? How did that work for you?
Yeah, that was something I did from the beginning because it's so much, it's a mystery, but I wanted it to be really propulsive and I wanted it to be really funny. And so I wanted the chapters, to be short and broken up, and also for you to get perspective. You couldn't be in Louise's head all the time because she's the one that has the secret. So I needed all these different perspectives, so that of people that are trying to figure it out while you, the reader, are trying to figure it out as well. And I really enjoyed writing all of those different perspectives because it gave me a chance to write different personalities and put in different types of humor. And, the text exchanges between the siblings are somewhat similar to the text exchanges between my siblings. I'm the youngest of three. I have a brother and a sister. And so that was great fun. I mean, I was cracking myself up writing them. And so I've been very happy that other people actually find them funny as well.
They're so darn funny, and their personalities just shine through as you're reading all of that. And I loved it. I thought it was a really great way to give their perspective.
Thank you.
Anybody else have a question they want to ask?
I have a question. Oh, can I go?
Yeah. Oh, yeah. Sorry, Rebecca. Go right ahead.
Sorry. Hi, Colleen. I
Hi,
wanted
Rebecca.
to ask about the nod to the Jeffersons, because when we met George, and then she was like, she changed her name to Louise,
Yep.
and they mentioned the Jeffersons several times. And then I saw in the acknowledgements that you said a thank you to someone who had an affinity for the Jeffersons theme song. And I was like, oh, I really want to know about this.
Yeah, so I love the Jeffersons. I grew up watching, reruns of it as an 80s kid. And it's a great show. And when I chose the names Louise and George, I mean, of course, I thought of the Jeffersons, and then I figured out a way to weave it in. The shout out in the acknowledgements is to my publicist, Craig, who is one of the greatest publicists ever. And he is obsessed with the Jeffersons, which I did not know until he read the book. And so like literally every single team meeting we have, he starts it by singing the Jeffersons theme song. And he thinks it's just the greatest thing ever. So we have a mutual love of the Jeffersons.
That was very fun.
Thank you.
So Angie dropped a question in the chat, and it is, what actor would you choose to play August?
Oh, August. Oh my gosh.
We didn't
He
even
has to
hardly
be
talk about
really
ahead
hot.
of time. Yeah, he's such a great character. We didn't even.
Yeah. So I mean, to me, he's like that Brad Pitt character, from Thelma and Louise. You have to have the hot guy. I think that I was picturing, and he's too old to play him, but I was picturing like Milo I don't know how to say his name, from
Ventimiglia.
Yes. Because he's just got the hair and he's kind of a little bit bad and like, but I think he's probably obviously too old to play August. I don't know. Do you guys have any thoughts?
Maybe Liam Hemsworth.
Oh yeah. He's
Could be.
very good looking.
He might be a little too old too.
And I'm trying to think of who I can think of as an actor that's that young.
Yeah, right.
Sorry, I'm letting Beatrice back in. Okay. We didn't even talk about August before you got. I mean, we were talking, so much about everything we liked, but I really liked the addition of that character, and I hadn't really thought about the Brad Pitt side of it, but I just thought he brought a lot to the story as well.
Thank you. Yeah, I mean, you got to have a little romance, a little cute boy action there. And also, there's so many times I think in books and literature, particularly written by men, where women are just the arm candy, where women are just there to, look pretty or whatever. And so I thought it was genius when Thelma and Louise kind of did that and had the hot man. And I thought, well, I should have a hot man too. But I also, one thing Thelma and Louise did do was pretty much every male character in the movie Thelma and Louise is terrible. They're like really bad men. And I just wanted to, have some good men as well, and not just be like a total male bashing feminist novel, because there are good men in my life. And, you know, I wanted there to be some good, likable men in the book as well.
I liked that as well. And Karen McNamara had a really good point when we were talking before you hopped on, is that you really kind of flipped Louise and Tanner's personalities. Like you would think from the ages that Louise would be maybe more timid and Tanner would be more outgoing or more, you know, less risk averse. And we
Right.
really liked that you flipped that.
Yeah. Thank you.
Was that something you thought about purposefully doing it that way? Or is it
Yeah,
just?
you know, that's something that I'm always very conscious of in my writing, is to try as hard as I can to steer clear of cliches or steer clear of the expected. And so, you know, I always work really hard to make things unexpected as much as I can.
I liked that.
Well, and piggybacking on August, I feel like you did that as well. I mean, he was painted kind of as this bad boy, and you find out, I mean, he did go to prison, but
Right.
he was, you know, a dad that dropped everything to spend time with his kids. And then when the story progressed, he was shocked that he was, you know, all of a sudden, you know, driving Tanner and Louise around. So it was funny. I felt like that was juxtaposed a little bit too. I mean, you felt like he was the bad guy and he was the one that's going, oh my goodness, are you kidding? I don't know if I'm going to be able to do this. So
yeah. And again, going back to Thelma and Louise, you know, Brad Pitt turns out to be this terrible thief. And I thought, oh, well, people are probably going to think, if they're familiar with the movie, that August is going to turn out to do something terrible.
yes.
And so I wanted to turn that too.
Yes. I enjoyed that. That was good.
Thank you.
I thought he might be undercover, Colleen, like he's undercover, like police.
You know, that did cross my mind. I have to say, I did think about that with his character.
I'm not sure I ever thought about that. And that's a great thing, Megan. I didn't even ponder that. And that is a great idea.
So you, I loved the book, and I loved your previous books as well. So I know you said Louise, you know, brought a lot of your grandmother and that experience that you had, but also, what was your view about the Thelma and Louise theme? Like, did you start with that, or did that come in later, or what was your?
Yeah, so
How did
Thelma
that
and Louise
weave
is just
into it?
one of my most favorite movies of all time. I think they're the greatest feminist duo of the big screen. And so that was kind of a North Star for me from the very beginning. For sure, I wanted to pay homage to that movie. I've always wanted to write a road trip book, I think ever since seeing that movie. And I think that movie really explored, you know, what it meant to be a woman in that very zeitgeisty time period. And so I wanted to do that kind of an updated version. Like, this for me is me exploring what it means to be a woman in our time period and Louise's time period, and how the two, you know, intersect and what they can learn from each other.
To ask, because with Tanner, and what your inspiration was for her and her backstory and her interactions with her mom and with her, and just how she, you know, came to be. How did you think her up?
Yeah, you know, it just started with needing kind of like the antithesis of Louise. But obviously, you know, I think most authors put a lot of ourselves, whether knowingly or unknowingly, into our characters. And with Tanner, I just really had to kind of go back to how it felt to be a 21-year-old. You know, I'd never had like the college athletic experience, or certainly not the devastation that Tanner had to go through. But you know, everybody kind of knows at our age what it was like to be a 21-year-old trying to figure out your place in the world and what you were meant to do. And so I really just spent a lot of time digging back through, sometimes painfully, those years, so that I could get her a little more clarity on her.
I liked that she was so angsty and that she had all of this pent up, I don't know, sadness, frustration, you know, just wasn't comfortable with the way things had unfolded for her, and that Louise was able to help her work through that. Like, I really liked that. And we were talking ahead about how she says, you know, I've worked my whole life for this. And Louise is like, all 20 years, you know, and kind of helped her put it in perspective. Like, you've got a whole long life ahead of you. And even though this does seem like it's the end of the world, you've got a lot of time. And I liked that.
Thanks. And yeah, I mean, like her mom had been saying that too, right? But you know, like when our moms tell us things, we don't listen, they're not right. And so it really does take that outside perspective, I think, before you start to truly understand.
Oh, for sure. I'm always asking other people to tell my kids this, you know, stuff, because
yes.
nobody
Oh my
listens to
gosh,
their
me
mom.
too.
Yeah, you know, so I totally get that.
Yeah.
What do you think the pull for intergenerational relationship, like what do you think it is about that dynamic, that theme that really resonates with people?
You know, I don't know. I think part of it is that most of us do have that relationship, hopefully, in our lives, you know, somebody much older that we have connected with, whether it is a grandmother, you know, a neighbor, a great aunt, you know, somebody that you really hopefully have that connection with. But I also wonder how much of it is, you know, our fear of aging and wanting to read about people who are aging well and don't make it seem so scary. And I don't know. I wonder how much that has to do with it too.
That's a good point. I hadn't thought about that. I just like that they both learned from each other. You know that Tanner's going to learn from Louise, but I felt like that Louise learned from Tanner too.
Yeah, I love that.
Yeah. Anybody else? Oh yeah, go ahead, Renata.
I love the book, and I just finished today in urgency before this meeting, but I was thinking, I don't know if you've seen the show Hacks.
Yes, I have not seen the second season, which I
Nor have
understand
I.
is a road trip that they're on. So I'm eager to watch that. But yes, and actually one of the reviews, I can't remember if it was Booklist or one of the trade reviews said, if you love Hacks, you'll love this book. And that made me so happy because I love that show.
Yes. It was very reminiscent for me, especially at the beginning, just with all of Tanner's pent up anger and
her angstiness for sure.
Right. And so I wondered how you decided to make her specifically 21 and not older.
I think because I needed her to be at a place in her life where it felt like her life was completely over. And I feel like, you know, there's nothing as devastating when you're that young as something that she went through, when you just feel like you don't have any perspective at all. I think somebody who's 26, 27, 30, you know, at least has a little bit more perspective and life experience saying, oh, I could probably get through this, even if it's really hard. And I don't know, I just really liked her being so young and there being such an age gap between the two of them.
And one more thing, did you ever consider putting V as a larger character?
I did. And I did have her showing up at the end at one point on the page. And then I decided that at that end, when they are getting off the airplane and her family comes to envelop her, I had V there at one point, and I talked it over with my editor, and she felt that maybe that was too soon for V to forgive her because of everything they had been through was so, you know, that it couldn't be that simple for V to forgive her. And so that's why I ended up putting that in the epilogue. But yeah, because the book is so much about female friendships. And so even though V is off the page, she is a huge part of Tanner's life and of the bad thing that happened to Tanner. So yeah, I did think about that.
The other thing I think, I'm sorry, go ahead, Renata.
You're fine.
I was just gonna say the other thing about making Tanner a college student or a, you know, dropout from college is that all of her friends are still in college. So all of this is happening. She's missing out on all of that while she is here totally regretting everything that's happened to her, which I think is partly why she kind of threw V under the bus. But I think, you know, if you're older, everybody's working and all that stuff, and, you know, you're not really in college with people going out all the time, playing soccer, doing the things she probably wishes she was doing. So I felt like that was such a good kind of pull for Tanner.
Yeah. And something that she was dying to get back to, right? Yeah.
Yes, like it would be a little less exciting if you're 27 and all your friends are working,
Right.
11-hour days. You're not as excited about getting back to that life. But college, you're thinking, oh, I'm really missing out,
Yes, yes. A lot of FOMO, as the kids say.
Exactly.
And I love the family dynamic before too. I just was cracking up that the big push for the mom kicking Tanner out of the house was over pickles. I mean, that is just so real. I mean, I just think back to some of the craziest things that have happened because I have 3 daughters that are grown now. I mean, it's over pickles or over a towel that's beside the hamper or something. So I just love the book. I mean, but you just all the way down to
But
the
yeah,
pickles. I was
you're
going,
right.
kudos.
It's just that kind of straw that breaks the camel's back
Yes.
because you have all of this built up resentment and anger, and then it's something so small that just explodes everything.
But that's always the way it is,
Yes.
it's not over the big thing that nobody really wants to talk about. It's over
Right.
something small like pickles.
Exactly.
Anybody else? Oh, Anissa?
Colleen, I was curious, did you ever in any of your drafts, did you ever have August coming in any earlier in their adventure cross country?
I don't think so. I think, no, I don't think so. I think that part kind of came pretty organically when he jumped in.
Okay.
Why did you want him to appear sooner?
No, I was just curious if you had a specific reason of why you put him in there. I didn't know if it was maybe you felt that female friendship, they needed their time to.
Yeah. Oh, for
you
sure.
didn't-
They definitely needed their time alone together. So I needed to build their relationship and what was going on between them without August as the distraction. Yeah.
Thank you.
I loved the whole scene in St. Louis with the arch where Tanner really wants to go up and Louise doesn't, and creates this whole thing, and they get out of there and Tanner realizes that's what happened. I just thought that was great.
So I have a funny story about that. Actually, that happened to my family.
Oh.
When we did a cross country road trip. We were going to Denver from Atlanta. And we, of course, were stopping at all the sites to see. And we stopped at the St. Louis Arch, and there was a long line, and it's my husband and I and 4 kids. And, we've been in the car for hours, and we were supposed to be in Kansas City for at my brother's house for dinner that night, which was like, I don't know, however many more hours we had to drive. And we're halfway through the line, and my husband goes, I just don't think we're going to make it. Like, I think we should probably get out of the line so that we can make dinner. And, half of us are terrified of heights. And so it probably wasn't going to be a great situation anyway. And so we, are edging out of line. We're like saying, excuse me to all these people. It becomes a big cluster trying to get out of there. And we're halfway to the door, and the security guard stops us and says, I have to ask why you got out of line. And we were like, oh, well, we just decided not to go up, and we have to go to my brother's for dinner. And he goes, well, it just seems a little suspect because it looked like you got out of line as soon as you saw the security, thing that you have to pass through. And we were like, what? Like, we have 4 kids with us. And he asked if we had any weapons, and we were like, no. Unfortunately, he believed us. He did not take us into a back room, but it was just, we were shocked and amazed. And everybody was watching, like there was something that was going to happen. So it was a little embarrassing.
That is hilarious though, because that definitely stuck out to me, and that's so funny. And if you are scared of heights, not only that, but like if you go up in the arch, those little cars are so claustrophobic. I mean, they're tiny and they cram like 6 people in there, and you're all like this together.
Yeah, and it's me. I'm the one scared of heights, so I'm very glad that we did not go.
And it's very claustrophobic, and you're sitting here, well, you'd had 6 people, so you'd have been set. But like, if you don't, you're crammed in with these people you don't even know, and this, and it's super slow. So I just was laughing. That was a great scene, and it's even better that it actually happened. Well, what about the title? I think we may have talked about this when I interviewed you, but was this the title you always had? How did you all come up with it?
Yeah, this is the title I've always had. So this is something about me and my writing and my books. It's not a real book to me until I've come up with the titles. So I come up with my titles very, very early on, like usually before I've ever written a word. And this was the same. I came up with this title and I just loved it. And then I started writing and it just really felt like a real book to me.
So do your titles always stay your titles?
All of them except for my very first book, which was Before I Go. That one, my original title was, I think, The Replacement Wife. And there had already been a book called The Replacement Wife. And so my publishing team wanted to change it. And I'm so glad they did. I like Before I Go so much better. But yeah, other than that, every single title. And it's been the same from like when I sit down to write until the end.
Okay, that is amazing. I don't think I've ever heard that before.
Yeah,
So
and
they're
this
really
one,
good
I
titles.
actually, when I turned the book in and we started talking about publicity and marketing, I emailed my team and I said, you know, I'm kind of going back and forth and I'm wondering, do we just call it Tanner and Louise? Because this is a mouthful. This is a really long title. And I started having second thoughts about it. And everybody on the team was like, no, absolutely not, because it's so memorable. And then I think the marketing director was like, no, long titles are in right now. It's so good.
Well, I know at first I called it Tanner and Louise until I got it down, and then I kept calling it the almost true story. It's like, no, it's the mostly true story. But it does fit, especially when you get to the end and you're going, you know, did they do it? Did she do it?
It's not.
Yeah, it really fits the story. So
thank you. Yes, I call it Tanner and Louise now because I'm just so tired of saying the whole thing and typing it out when I'm typing things. I just say Tanner and Louise.
I love that long titles are in. Now I'm going to be paying attention.
Right?
Well, does anybody else have any questions before I ask the last one? Mary, was that you? Did you raise your hand? Okay.
Yeah, I just had one. It seems like from the discussion that a lot of things like came really naturally and were like, you know, therapeutic and fun to write. Was there anything that was a really big challenge you had a hard time with?
I'm so glad I made it sound fun and easy. Yeah, you know, because I don't outline, it is every book I write is a great challenge. And I'm never quite sure where it's going to happen, you know, if I'm going in the right direction. There are many, many frustrating days that my husband can attest to where I'm, you know, crying and this is never going to be a book. So yeah, a lot of this one was a challenge and tying it all together and making it all flow, because sometimes when I would come up with one of these kind of surprising elements, then of course I have to go back, right, and edit a lot to make it all flow so that the surprising element is a surprise but doesn't come out of nowhere. And so if I outlined, that would probably be much easier, but I just can't work that way. So yeah, there were a lot of challenging moments in this book, along with it being fun and therapeutic.
Who was easier to write, Tanner or Louise?
That's a great question. I think Louise, because she was inspired so heavily by my grandmother, and I just felt like I knew her. And so I knew what she was going to say. I knew what sarcastic crack she was going to come up with, you know, and she was just really, really fun to write. Tanner was harder because I haven't been 21 in a very long time. And I wanted her to be really authentic, you know, and I don't hang out with a lot of 21-year-olds. There were sometimes with some phrases that I would text my kid's babysitter and I'd go, do kids say this? Is this weird? Would she still look at Instagram, or is that totally, you know, not happening anymore? So yeah, I'd say Louise was a little easier than Tanner.
That's funny. And, you know, with the kids that age, even a little younger, I guess, those things change so fast. You know, it's like one day they're doing one thing and a week later, they're not even talking about that anymore. It's amazing how fast that stuff travels now.
And it's impossible to, when you're writing a book that's going to come out a year and a half later, to make sure that you're on top of the trends.
Yeah, exactly. You just have to pick one and figure it'll work.
Exactly.
Well, what have you read recently that you really liked?
Oh my gosh, I've read so much. So one book that I cannot stop talking about is Notes on an Execution. Have you read that, Cindy?
I haven't, because I am a wimp and I'm afraid it's a little dark, but I have heard nothing but fabulous things about it. I'm just
Oh my gosh, it is dark and it is disturbing, but it also is just so beautiful. I mean, I was captivated. I've been recommending it to everybody. It was just so good. And then the other one that I've been recommending a lot is I'm Glad My Mom Died, that memoir by the Nickelodeon star. I can't remember her name,
Jeanette McCurdy or something like
Jeanette,
that.
yeah.
McCurdy.
Yeah.
Something.
That one was also wildly fascinating and I couldn't put it down. So those are two that I've read recently that I loved.
It's so funny because my daughter, it's iCarly that she was on. Is that the show? Yeah. So my daughter loved that show. So I had watched a lot of it because it would always just be on in the background. And then when all of a sudden that book was coming out, I was like, why does she look familiar to me? And then I realized I connected it up, but I haven't read it, but I've heard it's good.
Yeah, it's intense, but it's really good. Really good.
Good. Well, thank you so much, Colleen. I just really appreciate your time and it was fun to get to chat with you about the book.
Thank you so much, Cindy. This is such an honor and I'm so thrilled to talk to all of you guys and thank you guys for spending your time and reading the book and talking to me. I appreciate it.
Absolutely.
We loved it. It was good.
Yeah.
Yeah, it was a really fun one. So we really appreciate it. All right, everybody. Thank you.
Thank you,
Bye.
guys.
Thank you. Thanks, Colleen. Thanks,
Yeah,
Cindy.
thank you, Colleen.
Thank you.